we'll take questions.
All right.
Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone. Dulce Garcia
No, no.
with Border Angel, Executive Director. I'm accompanied today with amazing people, incredible human beings, really just angels at our border that do such great work. And we're here to talk about what that work has been in the last few months in Tijuana, and more specifically about the Chaparral, the encampment. Currently, thousands of migrants and asylum seekers wait outside of PedWest, that's San Isidro, Tijuana port of entry, and in this area known as El Chaparral. They created an encampment and they plan on remaining there until the current administration allows them the opportunity to present their asylum case and be reunified with their family in the US. Desperation for safety, misinformation on who and how asylum seekers will be allowed to enter, and so many other factors is what's driven the families to migrate and to camp along this border. The US and the Mexican government have failed to provide bathrooms, housing, meals, and legal information to migrants, placing the responsibility on nonprofits and grassroots organizations to provide humanitarian aid and legal support that they need. The organizations today have stepped up. They are part of these organizations that have provided some of these things and created even an alliance to support the encampment. I'll give them a few minutes for them to introduce themselves and talk about the work. There will be some very limited translation. De una vez de antemano me disculpo porque la plática del día de hoy va a ser primordialmente en inglés, va a ser muy poquito, muy limitado lo que se va a hablar hoy en español. Pero la plática de hoy es sobre el campamento de El Chaparral, que se encuentra ahorita en esta área en Tijuana, justo en el cruce para Estados Unidos. Y las organizaciones que se encuentran el día de hoy van a platicar sobre el trabajo que se ha desarrollado en los últimos meses ahí. So with that, if you want to know more about the biographies from these amazing humans, please check our social media. Today we posted one from attorney Ian Ceruelo and one from Robert Vivar, and we'll be posting more later. I'm going to go ahead and start with Robert, just because I know Robert has been at the encampment from day one. So Robert, if you want to get started.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dulce. And it's an honor to be here with the great alliance that has been formed in support of humanitarian aid for our brothers and sisters at the encampment. As Dulce mentioned, from day one, February 19, we have been here at the camp, mainly because my office is located just a few yards from the PedWest border crossing. Unified U.S. Departed Veterans Resource Center is also an official chapter of Veterans for Peace, a peace organization, a worldwide peace organization. And ever since back in 2016, when the first, or 2017, when the first Haitian migration exodus begun, we received instructions from our Veterans for Peace National Office to offer support. And then, of course, when the 2018 caravan arrived, that support was reiterated to offer support. And since then, we have been providing different manners of support, whether it's through hygiene kits, food, and now, of course, since the integration of this alliance to our migrant seeking entry into the United States to continue their asylum process. It has been very heartfelt for us to see the conditions that our brothers and sisters have had to endure, the precarious conditions, the health risk, the health hazards, the safety concerns that they have to have endured. As you can imagine, the majority of our friends here at the encampment have traveled a terrible journey, fleeing persecution, fleeing violence, fleeing extreme poverty to reach safety, to be able to offer a better life, or just even to offer life for their family. Forget about offering a better life, just to be able to even save the life of their family, of their loved ones, of their children, of their spouses, and of course of themselves. So when the need came up, we saw it very important to unite in this effort, along with my colleagues here, who each, of course, will talk a little bit about their work. When I met my friends here from the Alliance, which some of them, like Gina and Dulce, I knew a little bit. Gina, I've known for a while, but Luis and Ian and Judy, um, when I first met them, I saw their heart, I saw their desire, their urgent need to support and help our people. So it was very easy for me to want to participate with such great humanitarian persons in this labor of love to our community. Uh, when I, in particular, started getting involved with this alliance, um, my main part of the work was to assist in completing the questionnaires. And of course, the questionnaires was the vital information from each one of the persons that was requesting to enter the United States to initiate an asylum process. And after that, my other part of my job was to translate uh, for some of our attorneys. And after the translation, once we started getting approvals for some of our migrant communities to enter the United States, was to accompany our brothers and sisters to the border, so that they could have a smooth process as they would be admitted by CBP into the United States. Uh, the work has been extremely difficult because of the circumstances that our community has had to endure. And on many times, seeing the desperation in the family, the desperation of the mother, the father, for their hurting children, was very difficult to be able to withstand. However, it was not all, and it has not all been, uh, that sadness. And what I'm talking about is when you see that family at the border, when they are actually crossing that line and entering into the United States, and you see that sight of relief in their face. You see the brightness of the child's eyes, knowing that they are now going to be in a safe place. When you see the smile on the mom, knowing that her children will be protected now, that they will have an opportunity uh, to live, and not only live but have a quality life. It is very rewarding. It can perhaps erase a little bit of the sadness, the frustration that we endure seeing what our community has to go through. I know that we have our other friends here, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here, and I hope that you can all get the true meaning of what our alliance intention is, which is humanitarian assistance to our much needed community here at the encampment.
Thanks, Robert. We posted some of the links to your organization for the Unified U.S. Deported Veterans Resource Center. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to be posting them on our Facebook and YouTube channels, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. So next we have Gina from AFSC.
Hello, everybody. This is Gina Garibo with American Friends Service Committee. I'm going to try to do my best speaking English because I really get like panic speaking in public and in this kind of thing that are being filming. So, well, working in the encampment had been really hard, really frustrating. But at the same time, it had been like a huge... well, I don't know how to say that, like a huge
satisfaction,
aprendizaje, and about always believing in people empowered, and they trying to in the try to look for a better life and try to keeping one surviving, and at the very end lives of the main meaning of all these things that we are doing: solidarity, community, and all those kind of values that sometimes it's really difficult like to raise up. And well, when we start working on the encampment, that was because no Mexican authority was in there. People was there was an incomplete abandonment, and they were with huge necessity of psychological attention, legal attention, and humanitarian aid. At the very beginning, we were working like not together. We were working in everybody in its own effort. But then we realized that we only could work, we only could be stronger together, because this is like a huge word of necessity, of injustice, that if we don't get together, we cannot resist. We cannot resist alone. And sometimes when we finish the job and take it out, all the frustration that we are feeling because we are like giving the face all time in there and watching all the frustration from the people, is like, well, we need to talk with a friend. We need to talk with a person that is going through the same thing that I'm going, right? I would not judgment, just like trying to hear you, to help you, and to understand all this kind of things you try to do. But well, the things in the encampment are getting really difficult, because the border is still closed, because the human right of seeking asylum is being violated for more than well, in Tijuana for a long time ago, with the Metro Lease, then with MPP, and now with Title 42, and with the close of the border. And when the encampment started at the mid of February, I got like this perception that people were really tired of not being listened, or not being listened to for other ones. And the most of the people that were at the very beginning in encampment are already in the United States, because all the huge work that many organizations have been doing, including CHI, including Border Angels, including APLA, including all of us that are here through the for the exception to Title 42. But this necessity of the people that is looking for safety, it's still there, and it's growing every time. And what people that is fleeing from violence, from persecutions, face when they arrive to TJ is that the border is closed. Yeah. For instance, to the person from Michoacan that are fleeing from the organized crime, and that the Mexican government already give them the back. They are like here with any help, with the border closed, with no Mexican authority, with no international agencies giving help, even though there's their mandatos to help the person that are looking for help and safety. But what we had been doing here is like a platform trying to give like as we can integral services that is really difficult in this emergency and crisis time. For instance, Luis is gonna talk about that, I think, the psychological services, then the legal services, also giving or trying to raise some donation and taking the donation to the encampment, trying to listen all the time to women's, to kids, to children that are like trying to forget a little bit all the difficult situation that they are living in encampment. And what we have been noticed is still the absence of the government, and the Mexican government is like no around, just like little authorities trying to do some things. There is a little presence of some organizations. I noticed some of the organizations that are giving some classes or art therapies to children that is really nice. And what had been noticed also is the lack of information in there. For instance, one of the times when we get in encampment, I start like listening at different rumors from people that were saying that they were thinking that they have to be in the encampment to receive the legal services, which is completely false. And I heard some of these rumors that were like really weird. For instance, that they were that they were monitoring via GPS, and if you move from the encampment, the lawyers would know that you are not there, so they would stop your process. Those kind of things that were really weird, but obviously I understand as a part of the desperation, as part of no clear information for them, right? As part of trying to be alive, right? So I had been like a lot of time, many times in the encampment, listening to all those perceptions, all these frustrations, and trying like to calm down, listening to them. And sometimes I'm a specialist in giving some hugs. That's the only thing that sometimes I can do. And trying to support them, to canalizar. I don't know how to say that, like direct those one for the organization that can give them certain kind of services. The most frustrating things that I had been facing, and people is living in their own bodies, is like being in the port of entry with a date of entry, and the officer from CBP denied the entry. People that already are mentalized that they're going to have another opportunity to start again in another place where they're going to be safe with their family, with friends, with a network that can support them, and then like facing that, no, I cannot cross because the agent is telling me that he already notified my lodger and that my date of entry have to be rescheduled. And then realized that we didn't receive any notification, so we couldn't inform the people. And people were there with a lot of hope, with their all the things. Someone already stopped renting some spaces, and twice lose everything again. So it's like really frustrating, all the things that are happening at the border, with all this kind of externalization of the border, because at the very end, the last time that some of my colleagues were there at the port of entry, the municipal police from Mexico were saying that to the asylum seekers, not even the CBP agents, no? So this is like the whole things about the externalization of the border, like how the authorities sometimes or the U.S. government sometimes really don't care about the asylum seekers and don't want to hear their voices, don't want to understand that all the things that are happening in their countries where they are fleeing from, in a little bit part is the result of this irresponsible actions in politics between states. So it's a really honor to be here as a part of the Chaparral Alliance, Humanitarian Alliance. And it has been like really difficult to understand that we cannot solve everything, but that every time, every day, we are trying to do our best. And we are like trying to listen to people, to calm people, and to tell them, well, we don't know what is going to happen, but we're going to be here. And I think that sometimes this is important for them, for us, because here is not about saving someone. We are saving each other all the time, you know. It's like this kind of of interesting things when we deliver our life to defend human rights.
Thank you, Gina. We can hear in your voice the passion that you have for this work. So thank you for doing this and doing this work with heart. As you mentioned, it's not always easy. I would like to offer a part of the congressional testimony that we submitted at a hearing in the U.S. Congress. This was submitted in April. And if it sounds familiar and is still going on today, unfortunately, it's because things haven't improved. And you'll see some of what we're talking about, some of the difficulties that the folks in the encampment have been enduring from day one. And then Luis can tell us how is it that these folks are even coping or surviving in this space. So in our testimony, we acknowledge that we have been supporting the encampment from the very first day. I personally arrived physically to the encampment on March 25th. And when we arrived in the encampment, we immediately noticed that the migrants had no access to public bathrooms, that they had to pay money for the use of private facilities. And for some, it meant choosing between feeding their children or using the bathroom. Unfortunately, we were able to contract with a private company, and within 24 hours of our arrival, we were able to provide portable bathrooms in the encampment that were cleaned every day. The local Mexican government had promised them already for weeks that they would be providing portable toilets and had failed them. Eventually, they were providing bathrooms on April 6th, but they weren't cleaned every day or sanitized, which resulted in people disposing of waste in trash cans. There is no hand washing stations, no access to potable water, and we had actually had to walk migrants to the doctors. We included infants, so we walked over children so that they can be seen for symptoms such as diarrhea and vomiting because of all the unsanitary conditions in the encampment. Aside from the poor sanitary conditions at El Chaparral, safety became a grave concern, and one that continues to worsen daily. This area is known for high cartel activity, including drug and human trafficking. Recently, a woman arrived at the encampment shaking and evidently terrified as she held her children. She told us that she'd been robbed of all of her money by the cab driver and had just been dropped off. The woman did not want to report the incident to the police because she feared of known corruption of police officers. We provided her with a blanket and a tent to sleep. Stating that the need is great is an understatement, as families continue to arrive at the camp every day. This was back in April, and the conditions in the encampment have worsened, and the safety concerns have worsened. Around this time, there was still the school that was in place. There was a security team that was in place, and there was a community kitchen. Since then, the school was dismantled for threats and security reasons, the security team as well. And there's been challenges in feeding people. Border Angels has supported other local organizations and shelters, including our great friends from Volviendo la Patria, Raúl and Vanessa, husband and wife, have been just incredible in cooking meals for these folks, and other shelters as well, including Ejército de Salvación. And with all of that, you can see even and hear in the voices of the folks in this call that this is very emotional and this is really frustrating at times, very difficult. And so I want to give space to Luis now, who is a psychologist, a doctor in Tijuana that has been supporting the encampment as well from day one. So Luis.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to beforehand apologize because sometimes my English it's kind of stuttery, and I need to remember the words for me in order for me to explain. So I'll try to be the more structured as I can, and in times I may be speaking Spanish, so Spanglish in the end. My name is Luis Guillermo Gómez Rosales. I'm a coordinator for Psicólogos Sin Fronteras, which is Psychologists Without Borders. At first, when we tried to go into the field and see what was the situation on Chaparral, the first thing that we did, and we always do this kind of dynamic when we are going into shelters or other emergency situations, we do field analysis. And so we go into the situation, we talk to the community, we talk to the coordinators, we talk to the people that are in charge of the situation, the natural leaders or the official leaders, and we try to identify mostly necessities, particularly in the ones that are focused on what we can do as mental health providers. So we went into Chaparral and we were talking to different organizations. We were talking to the people in the encampment, and it got to a point where we started working first with kids, and we were taking dynamics, play therapy. We were taking art therapy. Other organizations from the United States were helping us with other kind of dynamics or play games through sports, so we can teach values to them, because we notice one of the heavy things that they are carrying since they are migrating from violence is that the set of values that they learn, they have to learn it in a manner that they use violence as a way to communicate with people, especially when we're talking about kids. And when we detected that kind of behavior, we tried to in a more mental health or psychological manner, try to help in that sense. So we were doing play dynamics with 40, 50, 60, even 80 kids at a time. Volunteers from Psicólogos Sin Fronteras, Psychologists Without Borders were helping us. And while we were doing that, we got the chance to know the people from the encampment and people from the kitchen, people from that are going, or we're doing some humanitarian work with them too. And we got to talk, and other necessities started to arise. And one of them is that most of them, not every one of them, but most of them were in Chaparral because they were trying to look for asylum to cross to the United States. So it was one of the main factors that got us to start looking for other means of implementing something that will help them. Because another thing that we notice is that when we do our psychological interventions, there is so much you can say to a person when they are living in a situation of vulnerability that can help them. So in order for us to implement something more of value to them that really will help them, we needed to implement other aspects of professional human endeavor. And one of them was, for example, the medical part. Because one of the things that you will notice in the encampment is that the conditions are lacking a lot of basic necessities. For example, Dulce was mentioning about bathrooms. When you go into the encampment, you will see the conditions where people are so close together. And remember that we are in a pandemic. So that was a concern for us too. And we got to a point where we were talking, and then I met with Gina. I met Gina in another room where we were sharing our experiences, and we share our concerns about the encampment. And we got to talk, and we started. We got to a point where our opinions were in the same page about trying to do something more efficient for them, something that they will help, trying to minimize the levels of stress, the levels of anxiety, the levels of depression that they were carrying. Because before we started all this humanitarian work with them, we were talking to them. We were giving personal sessions to them to try to help them in that manner. And that was one of the main factors that strike me, that they needed more than just the psychological help. So we started looking for other organizations. Gina and I started like looking for example, Hayas. For example, we went with Asylum Access. Gina got in contact with Dulce, and at that point, this whole group got together, and we started planning all this dynamic or platform that got together, and we formed this alliance. And this platform was planned in three basic steps. And the first one was, it was going to be the psychological intervention, because that would help us identify the necessities, and if they were able to fulfill the form or the intake that they were filling out to ask for Title 42 exemption. And then we started seeing that some of them got they have illnesses. And one of the main important parts of this platform was that we needed to identify those that can be treated, or we can just send to another organization. They can be treated before they cross the border. So we got in contact with nurses that they were helping in the encampment. And then when they finished the nurses doing their profiling about their health, then they would go and do the process with the lawyers. And this whole platform became something so important in the encampment that at one point a lot of people were coming from other shelters just to get this help in at one point, and that became kind of a problem for us. And that itself became one of the main factors for us to start changing the dynamic over time. Because at first we were attending people directly on the encampment. And if you go into our pages, any one of our pages, you will see the pictures and videos of 400, 450 people, 500 people at the time trying to get our attention for us to do their intakes or to do the psychological intervention. So we managed to progress to a different kind of approach with them. And in the end, we ended up canceling all the interventions there, because it like my partners here were talking about, there's so much trouble in the encampment, violence, drugs, all those situations that put people in danger, and we didn't want to be part of that. So instead of that, we decided that we're going to be going into shelters where people are in a more safe place, where we can do this humanitarian work. So in general, that's what we are doing. To this point, we're still going into Chaparral. We're still doing psychological interventions. We're still working with people, but instead of just focusing on that legal part, we're just trying to help people the best that we can. And that has been the main focus of this group, trying to help as a first fundamental principle. And then there is this humanitarian work that we have been doing, like Gina was mentioning before, because the necessities there, it's not only just the psychological part or the medical part or the legal part, but the necessity, the first-hand necessity of having food, for example. Dulce was mentioning about the kitchen, and the first kitchen dismantled because of all the troubles that were arising in Chaparral, the threats, the constant violence. And so we got to the point where we had to act about it, and we get together again as a group, and we put together, thanks to other organizations and thanks to other people that were donating, for example, stoves, kitchen wares, all the basic necessities for them to have another kitchen. And then there was once they had the kitchen, they had this trouble about, now we don't have any food, no donations, no nothing, because people stopped taking them donations for them to keep eating, because we're talking about 1,500, 1,800 people at a time. It's a lot of food that it has to be provided. So we got in contact, the whole group here, we got to be moving, talking to other organizations. And then there's other organizations that attend emergencies like this. For example, Cadena, ADRA, ACNUR, which at one point helped us to coordinate with them and have big donations of food to the point that it was tons of food for them there in boxes, and then other necessities that they had. This among other people from private organizations, social organizations, and private individuals who are still and keep donating, and thanks to them and the work that we're doing, they have a kitchen now again. But again, I go back to the same point where our work has been doing a multifactorial work, and not only, for example, in my case, not only psychological, but we had to get into it in different perspectives, and getting help from other organizations that specializes in other areas of human behavior, of human endeavor, excuse me. So in general, that's what we have been doing. I hope I gave you a general idea of our work. And again, I am very honored to be part of this, and I am very honored to know all this compassionate and dedicated people who are doing the humanitarian work with us. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Luis, for your testimony. So we'll give space to Judith to tell us about her experiences more recently since May in encampment.
Thank you, Dulce. Well, and thank you for the invitation. Like Luis just mentioned, I'm also very honored to be here and to be part of this alliance. And yet I came in May. I'm not sure how I ended up here, but glad I did. I started taking herbal tea to the encampment because there was a lot. No, that was in February, actually. There was a lot of, it was cold, and there were a lot of respiratory infectious diseases. And so one thing led to another, and here we are. So what I did was, first it started as a consultation for American Friends Service Committee. I'm sorry, for Liz, and I did a little evaluation. And this evaluation, let me just pull this up real quick here, was based on methodology by the Health Policy Investigation Center of UCLA. This methodology is called DATA, Health Data. And that DATA stands for Data, Advocacy, Training, and Assistance. So the first thing that pops out about Chaparral is that the issues there are ever changing. It's very dynamic in the problems and challenges that it presents to us, and they change as time goes by. At first, the main concern of the people who were staying there was to get an answer on how they could ask for asylum in the United States, since the border was going to open for MPP, for people in the MPP program. And the question that they were asking was, what's going to happen to the rest of us? Give us an answer, we're here. And they started staying there. Eventually, and this raised a lot of, well, my work there was mainly community interventions. So I was more in touch with the health aspects of this, physical and mental health. And this was causing a lot of stress, anxiety, anguish, even. The answer kind of sort of came with this exception to Title 42 procedure that ACLU won in court. So then we had an answer. So the uncertainty and the anxiety that the uncertainty causes, it lowered a lot. But then things moved on, because if we have this process now, if we have the access, we don't have to worry about that. But now we have to worry about getting access to that mechanism. And that derived in certain different kind of stress, but still stress. And this started raising security issues, because people would get aggressive or start fighting or having rivalries about who's going to get access to the lawyers first. So this developed within their internal dynamics. There was this like power struggle, we could call that. And who is in power at El Chaparral? That's a question that needs to be addressed to figure out how we can do interventions. And power has been shifting from people who were at the kitchen. This is very relative power, okay? This because they had the kitchen, they had the donations, they had the food, and so that was like a center of power there. And this also made a lot of people uncomfortable and dissatisfied. And so these struggles start happening, power starts changing, shifting. And then the kitchen left until Luis reinstated it with his efforts, all of us. And then the bathrooms were taken away. So then the main concern has shifted towards health and security, because the bathrooms situation and the poor access to water and, just in general, the sanitary conditions have created a peak in infectious diseases, both digestive and respiratory. Those are like the three big stages that I've seen while I've been in the camp, going from uncertainty to security issues to health and security. But now the security issues are not because people are fighting over who's going to get access to the lawyers, since there are no lawyers anymore at the encampment. We've removed that factor. The security issues are because of control. And basically, we have observed criminal activity, organized criminal activity that is taking over and controlling the sale of spaces, of tents, who can access or not the encampment. And there's also another factor here that plays a huge role, which is racism and xenophobia. This has caused a lot of tension inside the encampment within different groups. There was this, at a point, like a war of color, of people from Central America, Mexico, all up against people from African descendants. This has been very problematic, sad, and we have resorted to things like calling C4, which is a control center for the police, so they can keep an eye on the encampment when we know that attacks may take place. And this criminal activity and this control also gives more like free range for sexual assaults, sex trafficking. And this is when the lack of intervention from local authorities and the international agencies has really become prominent. We are a very small organization of 6 organizations, but really we are taking up on a problem that is way beyond our resources. I think we need these interventions from authorities, from the UN, from, ¿cómo se dice ACNUR en inglés? I have no idea. The High Commissioner of United Nations. Recently there was a consult done, and they called upon a few NGOs and a lot of authorities. A lot. I wish I could just read you the list. It's about 15 people, going from child protection to security and to these international organizations. They were all there for these consults. And what the purpose of this was to create like a coordinated response to emergencies in Mexico for people in transit. This comes with its own issues, like the legal language. What can we do? What can we do? And while we were there, I did raise the question, why aren't any of you at the encampment, you know? And there isn't really an answer except from Comar, because they work for getting humanitarian visas in Mexico or something. So they did respond. They were the only ones that gave me a reason not to be there. So these, we can call it neglect, maybe at the very least. But I think that when it comes to what we're seeing, and this lack of empathy and this lack of compromiso towards what's going on with the migrant community, really is not understandable or justifiable. Okay, so I want to go back a little bit on the main issues here. Right now, the main issues currently at the encampment are the sexual violence, sex traffic, like I mentioned before, racism and xenophobia, not just within the encampment, but also the structural racism that they suffer from. One example is a lot of the encampment, maybe 40% of the people there are Mexicans. Nobody knows this. In the collective imaginary, everybody is from Central America or Haiti. That's it. Mexicans are invisible there, as are people from Africa. Another thing right now is infectious diseases and misinformation. Misinformation plays a huge role in in what people decide to do. If they decide to go to Chaparral or to stay, a lot of it has to do with misinformation. They have the idea that if they do that, they have like a secure ticket to the United States. And that's not the case. And getting them the right information has proven a major challenge also. And so the last main issue that I have identified is, of course, the organized crime control due to the late or non-intervention of the authorities. And also for us as a team, and for whoever enters this kind of work, I think the main issues would be the emotional and the psychological aspects of our work, like burnout. But I'm also glad that I think we have a little collective care dynamics here going on. And also resources. And when I say resources, yes, I do mean money sometimes, but I also mean hands, volunteers, and time. You know, time is a resource that we lack. And that's it. That would be my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. There's a couple of questions, so feel free to keep posting your questions either on YouTube for those that are following us on YouTube or on this Facebook Live. We're going to go ahead and move with Ian, and we'll answer some of those questions after Ian. Thank you for all of the work you've done with the legal consultations. As Lisa was mentioning before, it provides a bit of relief for all of the anxiety that they're undergoing. So we can't really thank you enough for all of the work you've done, and for those followers, because I know you're super humble about it, but you know, you were till midnight sometimes at 5 a.m. in Tijuana trying to cross back into the US on that long line to cross back from Tijuana to the US as a result of your work with these legal consultation. So thank you. And I know we'll be sharing right now on the screen the great results that have come out from all of this effort from every single person in this call that has done tireless work to get these accomplishments. And I think they're great numbers to celebrate. So I'll leave that to you.
Thank you, Dulce. And hello everyone. My name is Ian, and I'm also very, very, happy and honored to be with this group working with these really passionate individuals. So we've started our work there, I think, around end of April, Dulce, correct? And so we later I will give some numbers to give those who are tuning in some information as to how many people we have reached so far. So there you go. So the number of families and individuals we have interviewed is 360. That's and then the number of applications we submitted is 291. And then so far we have 253 families applications approved, and that's a total of almost 900 individuals comprising those families. So given that we only started like end of April, this is like a over 2 months, 2 months and a half work, and being able to assist more than 200 families, and have interviewed more than 300 families. I think we have reached so far. I couldn't even imagine that we will be able to assist this many individuals. I think the first time I went in Tijuana at the end of April to meet Dulce, I was just I was looking at the situation at the Chaparral. I couldn't believe how the number of families living there, like the tents, the sanitation, the situation, the health situation, the sanitation in that area, the security situation. It's really hard to imagine how people could live there. But me as somebody who have lived in the Philippines and see so much poverty, I right away makes me recall the scenes in the Philippines in urban poor in the streets. And APALA as an organization has always advocated for my issues that affects the immigrants and migrants. APALA, just for everyone to know, we were formed in 1992. So we are called the Asia Pacific American Labor Alliance, and we're part of AFL-CIO, and we are a national organization comprised of AAPI workers and also community leaders, and we are very active in issues of social justice, issues of economic justice, issues of human rights, advancing worker, immigrant, and civil rights. So, and that's the reason why, I, as a member of the chapter, I know already during, at the first quarter of this year of what's happening at the border, that there's that growing encampment and humanitarian crisis that is brewing. And I always wanted to see or trying to figure out how to be able to help. And it's only when, later on with our work with San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, me and Dulce are sitting on the board, we were able to collaborate and find a way to be able to assist and provide humanitarian assistance to the people in the migrant encampment. So I think what is common among the 6 organizations is that while I didn't know the other members of this collaboration except Dulce, but I think I was so glad to having met these like-minded people who are also passionate about providing humanitarian assistance to the people at the camp. So I think the other speakers already provided the different layers of problems that we face. The aside from the sheer number of those who need assistance, it's also those different dynamics among different groups, the presence of this of some sectors that wants to take advantage and make money off the hardships of the suffering of those who are in the camp. So yeah, and the threat, of course, of them being evicted from that area with the announcement that the border is opening soon. So there's a lot of issues and problems that these people are facing, and we have been trying our best to provide relief in whatever form. And again, we are happy to have hundreds and hundreds of families approved to enter. I think more than half of those 250 are already here in the U.S. And I have heard news reports where some media organizations followed them through when they enter the U.S. And you can see the difference it makes. Just the change in the environment alone makes a very big difference as to the lives of these people, especially the young children who are really subjected to that kind of environment, which is, I think, very inhumane. And so we are happy to continue working until the government in both sides of the border get its acts together. So also I would like to make this opportunity to thank other people aside from we are only not the individuals who are working. We also have our volunteers, our staff to thank for the work that we've been doing. For me, also the other immigration attorneys who have volunteered, Aaron Giron, Cassandra Burhan, and Maricela Amisola, who also volunteered their time to provide legal intake. And also for many, three student interns that I have here in my office who have been helping me write those applications. Landy Gong of California Western School of Law, and we have Janely Rose Munoz of Thomas Jefferson School of Law, and then Luz Victoria Simon Jasso, who's not a law student, but she's a student at Princeton University who just volunteered and helped us prepare this application. So we are very thankful to all the other people who made our work possible. I have my own practice too. So aside from being an active member of NAPALA, I'm also running my law firm. So, and then trying to find time to be at the camp. Before it was Thursday and the Saturday, so it's really very challenging. But I also recognize that what we're doing at the encampment is very important. It's I think I will find time to whatever amount of time that is left in my day to be able to help. And again, I'm very happy to be here and be part of this group.
Thank you, Ian. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that this group has saved lives, honestly, in the work that we've done. I don't think any one of us imagined that we would be doing legal consultations and legal forums. They didn't prepare us for this kind of work, going in it with the expectation that we would be doing humanitarian aid. I didn't realize that legal clinics would be part of that. But it turns out that we were helping folks that had grave medical issues that needed attention right away. And yet some of them had been waiting in Mexico for years for the border to open to them. And although it's at the moment, uncertain what's going to happen to all of the folks in the encampment, we can safely say that we were able to get some folks across to safety, and that's immeasurable, right? We can say almost 900 families have been able to cross, but when we dig into all of these stories, we're talking about single moms, we're talking about children. Some had tumors, some folks had lost limbs in the Bestia and traveling through these countries to arrive to our border. And when they say thank you, it's not really hyperbole to say that we've been able to help them get to safety. I know there was a point of clarification, Robert, you wanted to make before we take on a couple of questions.
Yes, one of the things that I've seen quite a bit in the encampment, at many times can be portrayed as perhaps a black against brown type issue. Uh, our African brothers and sisters, Haitian, perhaps in a conflict with our Central American and Mexican, and we have to understand that in the desperation that people are subjected to by the conditions that they are living in, there's always going to be a way that they're going to look for somebody to blame, uh, somebody that they can snap at that is the cause of this desperation. Uh, what I have seen is that this desperation is in all the different cultures and all the different races that compromise the encampment. Uh, Groups of people, pockets of people that because they want to have control, will pry on the most vulnerable ones. So at given moments, it can appear to be perhaps a race war when it really, when you look at the bigger picture, you will see that it really is not. Uh, in many occasions, and I've lived it because again, I'm right here, right next to it. Some of our Mexican brothers and sisters or sisters, as a partner with a Haitian, with an African one, Salvadorian with Mexican, Salvadorian with Haitian, Honduran with Haitian, with African. Um, so to me, my personal view is that it's more a situation of control, a power struggle. In many occasions, that is derived from the desperation that people are being subjected to because of their needs not being fulfilled. And that need, of course, for the safety of themselves and their own family. Thank you.
Can I complement
Thank you,
something
Robert.
of what
Yes.
Robert is saying? Yeah, another thing that it's very noticeable in this kind of dynamic, we have to take into consideration that there are several cultures uh, 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 interacting with each other, and there will be differences. It's just nature of the social structure that it conforms there in the encampment. So the same problems that we will see in a society, in a comprised society like Tijuana, United States, they will reflect all those troubles there. The only difference is that they are living in a lack situation where the conditions are just not enough. They have to develop a kind of defense mechanism where they can coexist with each other, and in that way, this dynamic conforms in a way that it's just functional for them. Because remember that they are lacking a lot of what we as a society have, and they are struggling to make their lives better, and they are trying to cross the border, but suddenly that it's not happening. And when that happens, like Robert mentioned, the struggle for power, it's something that will arise as a means for them to empower themselves, and they will fight for it. So it's something that is very noticeable in the encampment.
Yes, thank you, Luis. There is a question about whether there has been any reaction, positive or negative, from neighbors around the encampment.
Can I?
Well, one of the
Yes.
rap between some owners. Oh, who's going?
Go ahead, Gina. Go, Gina.
Okay. One of the things of the good things that some of the owners from the bathrooms that are given the services and you have to pay for it. So the people that have the bathrooms in there, well, they are really happy because people needs to get to the bathroom. Sometimes they plan like a certain agreement and about not to paying all the ticket to go to the bathroom, but it's like difficult, right? Because if you don't have the money to pay for the service, well, it's like basic necessities, no? And also, when the government, the authority, take away the public bathroom that were there, there was like a huge concern between the neighbors in there. I remember one of the nieces in there that was really, really angry because she couldn't take her dog to a walk, or because the street was dirty. There was a lot of garbage and all those kind of things. And then I don't trying to play this camp between good and bad people. No, they're just human beings, right? And everyone trying to defend like their own point of view. But people that were in the camp were like, we are here because we need answers, or we are here because we want information. We don't know what to do. We don't have services. We don't have this one. We don't have that one. And people in the neighborhood were like, you don't have to be here. And I remember one time that we were filming. There was a neighbor that started screaming, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna get mad on us. But no, she was like, I'm totally agree with the things you are doing because nobody's paying attention and because the municipal police is always like hurting people and all those things. So it's like a huge mix of how people understand all of these things. And yeah, I think that at the very beginning, the xenophobic narrative was really high in the neighborhood. But when they realized that more and more Mexican are in encampment, fleeing from persecution, from violence in Michoacan, in Guerrero, in Jalisco, in different states in the country, they are like, well, now they are in this position, but nobody knows when it's going to be my time. So I had been like listening to all this kind of perception, good ones, mixed one, and bad ones. So it's like really difficult to understand. But when the authorities take away the bathroom, some of the neighbors start like, well, they are doing all their physical necessities here in the street, and they were like blaming the migrant and the asylum seekers, and we were like, well, what were the government expecting for if they were taking away these sanitation services? So it was like totally normal that happened, right? So, but most of the, unfortunately, like the voices that can be heard more are those one from the neighbors that are really mad because they are in there, right? Unfortunately.
Yes, thank you, Gina. There was a comment in our social media about someone being against illegal immigration. And I just want to, again, remind folks that we're talking about very vulnerable people that are in this encampment that are asking for the rightful claim to asylum. So, under both US law and international law, these folks have the right to make a claim to asylum. Title 42 is still in enforcement and unfortunately set to expire until August 21st of 2021, and we won't know whether the US government's going to renew it, which means that the border will remain closed to them for now. The applications that Ian was talking about, these are ways that folks are able to ask for entry to the US. This is a lawful method. When we close the door to asylum seekers and they're so desperate, we then funnel them to their deaths. There's no other option for them. And before we started to do these applications in late April, folks were having to make these decisions of whether to cross in the desert, and they still are today because the process has recently closed to them yet again. So we talked to folks in the encampment, including a mother that cried out to us saying she had to force to send her child, her teenage son, alone to cross through the desert in hopes that Border Patrol would catch him and process him as an unaccompanied minor, because she was afraid that the kid would die in the encampment in Tijuana as they wait for their entry date. So when we create the circumstances where folks have no other choice except to try to cross through the ocean, like we have heard in recent months, there has been an increase of maritime crossings, and that has resulted in deaths. This is a direct result of our immigration policies. So it's easy to say, well, I'm against illegal immigration, but the reality is that under our own policies and laws, they should be allowed in so they can make their rightful claim to asylum. And we're talking about children. There's over 500 children that are in this encampment even today. Ian, did you want to add something?
And to add to that, definitely, Dulce is right? So this is not, we're not condoning illegal immigration. This is, in fact, our obligation as a country, as a signatory to international conventions, as a signatory to, international agreements on human rights and those who are seeking refuge, fleeing from violence. This is our obligation as a country to provide a process for them to be able to present their case. So it is, in fact, our policy that is in violation of these international conventions, and that's why we try to provide humanitarian assistance to people in the encampment, we continue to also advocate for changes in the policy here in the U.S., especially to start to reopen the border and process these asylum seekers properly, because it is the policy of the U.S. that actually resulted to the situation in the encampment. Okay, to the humanitarian crisis at the border. So combined with other policies like the MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocols that was implemented under Trump. Those policies has been the main reason why many of these asylum seekers continue to be in a dangerous situation. I hope that clarifies, or that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Ian. We only have a few minutes left, so I do want to offer some more solutions. I know Judith talked a bit about what can be done. As we just mentioned, ending Title 42 and ending the expulsions is one clear one. And the other one would be to have an increased cooperation between the U.S. government and NGOs that are on the ground. That is one of the biggest frustrations, the lack of information from both governments, really, including the Biden administration, that because of the lack of information, the differences between the MPP procedures and all of the rest of the folks that were in the encampments. And before the amazing team from ACLU won a very limited way for us to file Title 42 exemptions, people were at a loss. And even today, that confusion is what adds on to people's vulnerability and an increased likelihood of being part of a fraud. So aside from partnering with organizations, I think there has to be a clear redirecting of the framework that the U.S. governments use instead of militarized framework, one where it expels people, uses resources to fly people across the border to then expel them to Mexico, instead of this idea that folks are invading our country or creating a crisis at the border, instead of having that narrative, to use a framework that is more based on humanitarian principles, on humanitarian aid, to really address what is needed in our region, because in San Diego, we're not just divided by a wall, and Tijuana is completely isolated. We are a binational community here at this part of the border, and that needs to be addressed more accurately. If anyone has any last minute thoughts or any last question, there's just a couple of minutes. There's a question about media outlets that we trust in reporting what's happening in El Chaparral, and something that can help with swaying public opinion. If you, as Lisa's mentioned, if you go to our individual pages, certainly at Border Angels as well, we continue to highlight these stories. I know AFSC has done a great job also in putting the voices of the encampment, voices from El Chaparral publicly, to give again an idea of who it is that we're talking about. And we continue to post those stories on Facebook, so please follow our organizations for more information on the work that is done. There's a question about whether our alliance has a special website with updates, special needs. We haven't.
Not idea.
It's a great idea. We are.
Actually, I was gonna add to what you were saying, Dulce, about what can be another solution for all this that is happening, and just taking as an example what's happening in Chaparral in particular. One of the things that has been helping a lot is alliances, because one organization on itself or one individual can't do the whole work that it's needed for us to really make a difference in the life of these people. So what we need to do is create alliances, even if it's just temporary alliances, to create a more an emphasis in a more constructive way. So anyone who is listening, anyone who is watching us and want to participate of this alliance, I personally think, and from the perspective of as an organization, I invite you to reach to us. If not, just send us a message, and I will reach you. Any one of us will reach back to you, and we will try to make that happen. Because if that happens, if instead of 6 organizations, suddenly we have 20, 30, believe us, it will make a big, huge difference.
Yes, thanks, Luis. I think this was a great example of what a few people can accomplish, because what we've accomplished so far, I'm really proud of. It's been incredible work. And like you said, if we had 100 more people do this, I think it would have made an even bigger impact on the encampment. But I think we're a great example of how a few people can make such a great difference. Folks that really care about this work,
and I think this needs to be said, because we are so few, and there is so much people that needs the help. And believe us, the stress that we're going through, we had meetings where we were at 12 o'clock at the midnight, just going out at that time all day, from 2 to 12 o'clock of midnight, and it was just so much work that had to be done. So that's why I was mentioning I'm so honored to be part of this group, because people that are very, very, very dedicated to the humanitarian work that we're doing, and it's just so beautiful, and it's a feeling of this cooperation that makes us grow more.
Thank you, Luis. Does anyone want to add to that before we part?
Yeah, I think for me, the reason that I think we didn't think about even websites and all is that we thought that this is going to be a short-term collaboration, that Title 42 will end right away, and we were hoping, well, now we were hoping that the Biden administration is going to, find a faster way to provide assistance to these people, but it didn't happen, and it keeps on getting delayed and delayed and delayed, and that's why we continue to exist as a coalition.
Yes, we kept hearing May 21st, Title 42 is going to be lifted, and then June 21st, then July 21st. Now it's August 21st, and we're still here, unfortunately. Robert, did you want to add something?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to thank the alliance, because part of my work is to support U.S. military veterans that have been deported and family members. And thanks to the work of this alliance, we actually had the opportunity of getting two of our members home. Deported mother of a U.S. citizen, active duty intelligence officer, was able to go home, be reunited with her family in San Diego. Also, our deported veteran, Andy De Leon, 78-year-old deported veteran, was finally able to go home and be with his 98-year-old daughter, meet 98-year-old father, and meet his grandchildren. And to me, I'm just very appreciative of all the work on behalf of our migrant community, which transcended all the way into the work that I do with our deported veteran and military family community. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Robert. So I think we're going to end with that. There will be a talk coming up with Border Angels with Robert and Rocio, talking about military issues. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be next month, August. And with that, again, I can't express how grateful we are to all the work that you guys are doing. I know it's pretty selfless, and it's just incredible, how dedicated and compassionate you guys are, and I learned so much from all of you, and I really appreciate the camaraderie and the work that's been done in the encampment. Hopefully we don't have to do it anymore, but we'll see. Thank you again, and all of your information has been put on our social media for folks to follow you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
See you.